Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1162 of our daily content streak, and today we are going to be talking about the two newest issues from the Skybound Transformers comic books, issue 13 and 14. I have been thoroughly enjoying these comics. They're a very gritty, raw take on the G1 mythos with a lot of new changes that actually have been very surprising. If you have not checked out the books, I highly recommend them. They are absolutely worth doing so. And as more encouragement to actually go read the books, we are going to keep the examples from those books to a very bare minimum. I'm only going to pull what I feel is necessary to convey the review. Most of the visuals you see will be from covers and preview images that are all over the place already. And yeah, I'm not going to give you the whole rundown. There's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of dialogue that is very much worth reading. There's a lot of very interesting stuff going on. So yeah, whatever I describe in this video is going to be just a pittance of what these comic books do. I'm also going to state, like, it's disappointing to see that the AI generated cover that was done by a known plagiarist in the industry was published. I'm really hoping the Skybound never said anything about it. I'm just hoping that the noise created by that hopefully means they might not hire him again in the future, because frankly, if he's tracing and generating all of his stuff that he was paid to draw himself, he doesn't deserve to be in the industry. But that aside, that chastising of Skybound aside, let's actually talk about the story. Last time on Transformers Skybound, Starscream died. Or at least came close to it. So, after being an incompetent and overly violent leader, Soundwave deposed him by beating the Royals scrap out of him, and then ripping his guts out to repair, for spare parts to repair Ravage, before chucking him down a cliff into what should have been a lava bath. Narrow miss on that part. That means that a lot of this is actually spent in Flashback, which is an interesting take. Now, this is not going to be a totally linear review, because we're going to go through all the Flashback stuff first, which pans both issues, and then we're going to get into what's actually going on in the waking world, which also pans both issues. It's a very nice, like, two comic block of story that tells two different sides of what's going on in Starscream's head, and it's a very good, like, just pairing of issues for that. Kind of makes me glad that I review them in pairs because of synergy like this. But we are back on Cybertron during the flashbacks, where Starscream was still an engineer and a scientist. I love when they remember that that's actually part of his origin story. He wasn't always a warrior. And in fact, he wasn't even Starscream at the time. He's being referred to as Ulchtar. Now, for the uninitiated, that's an extremely odd name. However, this is where I can tell someone at Skybound is either a really dedicated fan or they are very good at their research. Ulchtar is the original proposed name of the Starscream character back when Bob Budiansky was actually creating them in the first place. That's an extremely deep, obscure cut, and to work it into the origins of this version of Starscream is absolutely brilliant. I love that they went this direction. I love that they paid attention to this. It's a very different take on Starscream. He is not corrupted by violence or power yet. He's just kind of him. You know, he's happy. He's smiling. He has friends like Genvo here. And we even see him with Jetfire. You know, and I love when they remember that like Starscream and Jetfire were like best friends back on Cybertron. They are talking about the war. We're hearing like the rumblings of like, yeah, like there's a conflict going on, but we're not taking sides in it. You know, we're just kind of like chilling out, enjoying life, etc. That kind of thing. This Starscream is actually more along the lines of like a turbo-revving young punk. He busts into a spot to essentially create a lot of noise because he wants to get attention. Of course, Starscream, no surprise, he wants to get attention. What he wants attention from, though, is Omega Supreme, a Titan. There's a very, like, there's an interesting way they're approaching, like, Omega Supreme. Like, his arrival is heralded as, like, some kind of, like, extremely rare occurrence, like almost the same as like going to see like a solar eclipse or like a really impressive meteor shower, or like a nearby comet, something like that. Like something like I can see it tonight, it's a huge spectacle, so we're going to go see it tonight. Because he really just wanted to get attention. He wanted to actually be seen by Omega Supreme, and he was. He actually successfully gained the attention of this monolith of a transformer. And there's actually a lot of like good vibes here. It's like that summer adventure with friends type movie. So when we take a look at this, this is just like a really like nice, hopeful kind of scene. They kind of split off their ways. Genvo's joined the Decepticons because he's really impressed by their leader. Jetfire hasn't taken a side. He's off to explore, as he usually does. And Starscream's just kind of left to his work, or Ulchtar is left to his work. And then the war reaches them. This Starscream actually has motivation for what he has done. At the very least, an excuse for why he has joined the Decepticons. So, Genvo was unfortunately killed in what seems like an Autobot attack. This is interesting. So, we've already seen where Decepticons outright describe Autobots as, like, evil. Like, they are actually genuinely viewing the Autobots as the bad guys, and we've seen where they have, like, stronger bonds than they did, on Earth, where there's a lot of referring to each other as brother. There's a lot more camaraderie than you normally get with Decepticons in this series, which is, again, an interesting direction to have for them. So you'll also notice something in this scene. I know it's a little bit hard to see. I mean, I'll show you a shot here in a bit where it shows a little bit more clearly. Starscream's eyes are blue. Starscream's eyes are blue. As he chooses the Decepticon path after this scene, they do become red. I think it's interesting that two pieces of Transformers media both had a very similar idea for the color shift to red eyes. I'm not going to refer to what other media, just in case you haven't watched it yet, but it's a kind of a cool thing to do. I'm kind of happy to see that both, Skybound also picked up on doing that. There's it's a heavy scene. Like, it's weird. And the thing to take into this is the fact that, like, Genvo's last words are, "You screamed the stars into seeing us." I normally don't like when they do, like, the explanation for the name. Like, Han Solo is named Han Solo because one day he went on a transport by himself, so they wrote down his last name as Han Solo because he's by himself. I hate that. Don't ruin cool names by giving them lame explanations. Sometimes you can just let a cool name just be a cool name, You don't have to be that blatant about it. You don't have to explain it. Just let it be a cool name. But because they worked in the Ulchtar aspect of this, I actually really like the fact that they gave Starscream's name an origin. There's meaning to it. His very name reminds him of his friend who was gunned down by the supposed evil Autobots. Optimus Prime himself was part of the big attack. And it really did seem like the Autobots being the aggressors, which is something we don't typically see with Autobots. It's fascinating. There is something to the Decepticon mentality and something to the Decepticon motivation in these books that is very different from what we normally get, and it has me extremely curious as to exactly why they are the way they are in this book. You know, it seems like it's going to be a very different thing. I'm incredibly curious. After he joins up with Megatron, Megatron basically wants to craft him into his own personal executioner, which is where we get the first scene of Megatron transforming in Skybound, and yeah, he turns into a gun, which hilariously has tank treads on it. It's a way of trying to get the two to make sense. So he turns into a tank gun. It's one of the silliest things I've ever seen Megatron do, but, I mean, at least they're trying to work the two together. It's also in a scene that actually does the very obvious and easy thing with Megatron. Explain why he's a gun. Megatron mentions that there are limits to his power, that he needs someone to wield him to be at full strength, which goes into like the long fan-made, like fan-dreamed implication that Megatron is stronger as a weapon when he's in gun form because all of his systems are no longer dedicated to him being a functioning robot. Everything is dedicated to him being a weapon. So all of his power can be directed into just killing whatever's in front of him. And that should be the easy explanation, that they never go for that. Well, Skybound went for that. They actually explained why Megatron turns into a gun, why he needs to be wielded by somebody. It pains Starscream to actually eliminate these prisoners. And then we have the montage of every time he does it, it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier every time, to the point where his disgust at doing it becomes, anger. And it becomes, like, revelrous. Like, he starts taking joy in it. Then, of course, we know the Skybound Starscream. He's one of the most violent Starscreams we've ever seen. He takes joy in just mercilessly killing things. It's why seeing him, like, take joy in things like getting a Titan to take notice of him, the little swarming bugs that they run into, finding beauty and joy in things. It's such an enormous contrast. It shows just how far this Starscream has fallen. It's almost a parallel to the kind of fall that IDW Megatron had, where he's just this incredibly different person before the war, and it just turned him into this maniacal killer. But it seems like there's so less room for Starscream to ever make up for that. It's not going to be, Starscream ain't going to take the same approach. This is an incredibly violent and dangerous take on the character. Now keep in mind, while most of these flashbacks are going on, Starscream looks like this. He's bleeding out energon from every part of him. He's essentially ripped in half. The lava will eventually rise up and consume his legs before he is eventually salvaged by this guy. This is General Horton. General Horton is a bad guy, and you can tell because he's smoking a cigar. If you were in the 80s as a comic book or cartoon character and you smoked a cigar, it was to indicate that you were the bad guy. Old animated movies loved to do that. The one exception is Wolverine, by the way. And don't tell me about Lobo. He's anti-hero at best. No. Generally, no. This is a pretty good indicator of villain. And yeah, he basically wants to rebuild Starscream for his own glory. So he, and interestingly enough, he sticks him onto a hiss tank. I'm not even sure. I believe this is I believe like Horton is G.I. Joe connected, or is like Cobra connected in this universe. It's either not clear or, admittedly, I don't remember. I read the book when it first came out, and it's been a bit. It's been an interesting time since then. Point being, we have this hysterical Starscream who is now glued to a hiss tank. He's not happy about it, but he's also entirely loaded with explosive charges throughout his entire body. So he really doesn't have a choice but to go along with these humans that want him for their own goals. In fact, the only thing he's happy about here is seeing a cat be very violent to the humans. He likes the cat because the cat is also violent. But yeah, here we have a Starscream who is low on energon, down a wing, down an eye, down a pair of legs. And the hiss tank is being controlled by the remote control that Horton has, so he's kind of boned here. So he does what Starscream does. He manipulates. He lies. He says he was looking for a human ally. We know he's not. But they don't. They don't know that. So Starscream goes along with this for now because he essentially has no choice, but he's still running his own machinations. They encounter Astrotrain, who is still chained up from Beachcomber, and Starscream immediately frees him. Now, because of everything going on in these issues, he has a much easier time getting Astrotrain on his side with the promise of, yeah, you're going to get your hands on Megatron. Because Starscream hates Megatron, and Soundwave, the current leader of the Decepticons, who originally promised Astrotrain, he gets his revenge at Megatron. Why? Soundwave is a loyalist to Megatron. Of course you're not going to get your revenge that way. So yeah, Astrotrain is happy to join up. And good timing too, because thanks to Shockwave, we got a chunk of Cybertron just jutting out of the ocean on Earth now. So, yeah. There's a lot going on from this point. Things start moving very, very quickly. Starscream gets all the humans onto Astrotrain. It's like, well, look, we need a ride. We need a lift. I'm offering one. Let's get us back to where we need to be. I'm helping. Wink. While they're flying off across the ocean, they happen to spot something, and a couple somethings actually, and they just happen to have people waiting for them on this chunk of Cybertron. Starscream and Astrotrain recover the Combaticons. It's always great to see the Combaticons loyal to Starscream because, of course, he's the one who created them in the original G1. So to actually have them as part of Starscream's brigade once more, kind of cool to see. Because Starscream is now back in his full glory. Well, minus the legs. But he has Decepticons who are hailing him because, well, he freed Astrotrain and promised him Megatron. He reunited the Combaticons after Shockwave's machinations, unintentionally, admittedly, divided them. In Brawl's case, literally divided them. But they're also not happy with Soundwave because they heard everything that was going on. They view him as a traitor now. So yeah, everyone's on board the Starscream Astrotrain now. Except for the humans. See, Starscream is pretending to go along with Horton, but has also been doing his own things. So Starscream promised the other soldiers that were there that if you disarm these traps, I'm just gonna let you go. Rule number 1 is don't trust Starscream. Rule number 1 in all of Transformers is don't trust Starscream. So when Starscream has his army, and Starscream no longer has these explosives wrapped up in his body anymore, what do you think happens to the humans? You can guess what happens to the humans. The only survivors are the cat, which can actually be seen riding Starscream's shoulder for the rest of the book, and this guy. So, among them, there was a private who actually sketched Starscream when he was recovered to kind of show, hey, dude, you had no legs. This is the hysterical reaction. On one hand, Starscream was momentarily flattered that a human would actually draw his image, because this is greatness to Starscream. The fact that someone would actually, make artistic work of me means, it just backs up how great I am. And then he gets upset about it because Starscream. But it amuses him enough to let the private live, because now he is going to chronicle his rise to power and continue to draw Starscream. So we have a human survivor, we have a cat, and we have a Starscream who is now armed with a lot of very angry, very well-armed Decepticons. And that's essentially where our story ends. And the two books together just pair perfectly for this great two-book arc to both explore Starscream's past, his origins into the Decepticons, and his plans for the future. It's a really good look. And yeah, it's a really, really good pair of books. I'm curious as to how Starscream and Brawl both need a set of legs now. Kind of curious how that's going to go down. But we have something interesting here. We have two different factions of Decepticons now on Earth, and some Autobots who are both suffering from their own losses, as well as a little bit of discourse within them, especially with Elita 1. This is a lot. There is for a book that started off exactly where G1 started off, it's going into a very different realm now. We are getting a lot of very different things, and I'm very, very curious about the next book. So, there you go. That's issue 13 and 14. These books continue to be fascinating. These books continue to be very well written, doing new things and still respecting the past, including parts of the past that have never been canonized before. I still love the Ultar thing. So, go read them. They are still worth it. And, of course, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.